So I'm Havala Schumacher. I'm one of the program managers on the NRCS projects branch with oversight of the Wetland Mitigation Banking Program. And I have with me Sean Vickers. Sean, I'm not going to make you turn on your camera unless you want to.
No, that's fine. I put on a clean shirt today. Just look forward to working with anyone who's interested.
All right. So let's just go ahead and get started. So first things first, this webinar is for the Wetland Mitigation Banking Program, which is specifically for the establishment and development of wetland mitigation banks to make credits available for agricultural producers who want to stay within their Farm Bill eligibility requirements. So they're not mowing over any wetlands without mitigating those on-site effects and to give them an option to buy credits so that, again, so they can stay compliant and eligible for USDA funding. So this program first came about in the 2014 Farm Bill, which gave NRCS funding to operate a program or on its own or to work with third parties to establish agricultural wetland mitigation banks. We chose the first approach, the second approach which was to work with third parties through grant agreements to establish those banks. We got additional funding in the 2018 Farm Bill, so it's been $5 million available every year since that Farm Bill through next fiscal year, which point we'll get another Farm Bill. So again, this year we've got $5 million available to folks who want to establish a wetland mitigation bank. Eligible applicants are any qualified third party with the experience and capacity to operate and manage all aspects of a wetland mitigation bank. So these are folks who are able to, on their own, identify sites, set up the bank, set up the banking instrument, do the on-site work, sort of all of those technical and financial pieces without significant assistance from NRCS. So operating almost completely autonomously in that respect, with some exceptions that Sean will talk through a little bit later. Minimum award for this is $400,000 with $1 million as the maximum available. And we do give priority consideration to applicants who provide outreach to historically underserved landowners. So that's veterans, low-income farmers and ranchers, entities who are part of groups that are socially disadvantaged, who NRCS has not traditionally provided good service to. That's outreach in the form of making credits available to those landowners, as well as soliciting sites that may be on those HU landowners' land. All right. So additionally, we do prioritize banks in areas with significant numbers of individual wetlands, but mostly conservation compliance requests. So producers coming to the NRCS state office with requests to provide some mechanism to comply with Farm Bill conservation provisions. So as of last year's data, those states were Georgia, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Nebraska, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and the Prairie Pothole region, which is Iowa, Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota. Those are the states where we are most likely to fund projects just because the demand for the program is greatest. That said, we also evaluate the quality of proposals, and states with a large number of wetland acres that don't have as many compliance requests are also eligible for this program. So if you're in a different state, that's not to say don't submit an application. Just know that these folks will be first in line. Program funding can be up to 80% of the total project cost. So, say for a project where you get $1 million in federal funding, match has to be at least $250,000. So for a total of 125, or sorry, $1.25 million project. So 25% of federal ask equals 20% of the entire project budget. That can be cash or in kind, and we'll kind of talk about some things that you can use match for, use federal funding for, or not. All right. So again, we kind of said this a little earlier, but the banks under this program are for a specific purpose, which is to make credits available to agricultural producers who need to comply with wetland conservation provisions and can't get around this in some other way. So the producer can't mitigate on site, or they can't avoid disturbing the wetland, and their remaining option is to purchase credits. That's what this is for. Sean, I was going to turn this over to you later, but do you want to take it from here for talking about compliance? I feel like you are the more intelligent party on this issue.
Oh, sure, no problem at all.
Thanks.
Yeah, we're just trying to cover what the purpose of this program is, and most of you know out there that if you're a USDA producer and you're receiving USDA program benefits, that you can't convert a wetland by planting an agricultural commodity on a converted wetland, or even converting a wetland that makes the production of a commodity on a wetland. So just leave the cropped wetlands alone and come to us and let us help you try to figure out a way to mitigate those wetlands that are on your property to help you make your farming operation more compatible.
All right. So, we're kind of repeating ourselves here, but just to emphasize, um, again, if the producer can't avoid avoid impacting the wetland, or they can't mitigate it on site, they can compensate. They can decide to mitigate by compensating for the values, functions, and acreage of the through creating the wetland, restoring a wetland, or enhancing within the same watershed. So that's kind of the DIY approach. Um, Alternately, though, and this is the point of this program, mitigation sites can be created on someone else's land or on a land held by a mitigation bank. All right. So, promised you're going to talk about what you can and can't spend in wetland mitigation banking program funding for. So, what you can spend the money on is development of the banking instrument itself. So, that's kind of all of that legal and logistical stuff necessary to set up what is needed to sell credits to producers. You can use funding to identify suitable mitigation sites and perform your assessments to determine available credits and a credit release schedule. So, kind of decide what those sites are, what you're going to do on them, and what the credits that you're going to produce are. Doing market research and contracting for mitigation activities, absolutely fine, as are land surveys, permitting, title searches, design and formulation of mitigation plans, restoration, enhancement, or creation of wetland mitigation bank sites, tracking and management of wetland mitigation data, direct administrative costs. So these are your personnel costs, things like that, and indirect costs are also allowable. So, wide variety of activities that are fundable, with just a couple of caveats about things that we can't spend program funding on, which is that you cannot spend wetland mitigation banking program funds to purchase land or purchase conservation easements. However, that 25% of federal or 20% of total project costs match, the value of that land or conservation easements can be applied to the project as match. Um, can't spend it on this is sort of general federal grant stuff. So capital expenditures, equipment, buildings, land, essentially something that is not for the grant, but you're using to materially improve the site for some purpose that is not related to the grant, not eligible under this program. And we do, as you know, in NRCS have a number of programs related to wetland function, easements, that kind of stuff. If we're already funding you doing something related to wetland restoration on another site through another program, we can't double fund it here. No double dipping. But that's about it for the yeses and the nos of how I can spend funds. All right, so this is kind of the where the rubber meets the road. How will my application be evaluated? We are a large federal agency, which means that just as much as your plans for producing this wetland mitigation banking bank, the submission of a complete and correct application that we can kind of check all the boxes, also really important. So the first things first is, we're going to ask you for an SF-424, SF-424A, an application narrative, a budget. If any of those elements are missing, then we will disqualify the application. And so that can be really unfortunate when you are an experienced banker who maybe just didn't read the application closely enough. So do read the funding announcement and check for all of those required documents. I would strongly suggest titling them, what they are titled in the notice of funding opportunity, just so it's clear to us what you're submitting. Geographic scope. So again, we do give priority to those projects that are in an area with a high number of individual wetlands, wetland producer compliance requests. So if it is within one of those priority areas, that's kind of a yes or no. Are your project goals clear? So, can we tell why you're doing your project and what you intend to do? We do look closely at whether your project team has experience creating and managing a wetland mitigation bank previously. So do make sure that you very carefully describe your team qualifications and your plans for managing the project. Mentioned historically underserved outreach. So again, are you making an effort to involve producers either through sites on their land or availability of credits who are in one of those groups that NRCS has traditionally not been as good at providing service to? And then, bank development and operations. So there's a note here that priority is given to shovel-ready projects. That means the closer you are to being able to put something on the ground, the more favorably we'll view your application. So these are pretty short projects, 3-year projects, and so aspirational projects are less desirable than projects that are ready to start digging, essentially. All right, Sean, your turn.
You bet. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the NRCS roles and the bankers roles today. The NRCS role is you will be working with your individual state offices if you do get selected for a grant award. Your NRCS state biologist or someone similar to that will provide the technical oversight throughout the life of the bank. Review your restoration plans for each of the bank sites that you want to restore and get going for your bank. Your NRCS state biologist will work with the state conservationist in your state to approve the mitigation banking instruments. We'll provide you with a checklist of what we want to see in those instruments. It'll be basically the same content as what's in 33 CFR. If you've done some kind of Clean Water Act bank, we'll use that same type of process. We'll also provide you an easement template with the minimum deed terms, so each of the bank sites will be protected within your project. Your responsibility is to identify and secure the sites, the bank sites, without NRCS assistance. It is not our assistance to help you find bank sites. I'll probably try to summarize some of these things to avoid at the end of the presentation today. You'll be developing your banking instrument and presenting it to us. That'll contain all the things that a bank instrument normally contains, how you'll operate the bank, financial assurances, your long-term management plan, all of those things, credit release schedule, et cetera, et cetera. You'll be submitting regular project reports to us as to how your project is progressing or not progressing. And you'll communicate any concerns to either your state office person, or if there's a conflict there, you'll let me know. And that does happen. Don't let that alarm you. We have people that retire, and you get a new person in the NRCS state office who has a different thought process on how to do things. Conflicts can arise, and that's what I'm here for, is to help mitigate those conflicts. We can get on the phone together and work through that. So as far as generating the credits for your bank, we'll use the same process that the Corps uses for those banks. We'll use an HGM model if there's one available in your area, or some states have their own credit development process, state approved methods. And beyond that, if we need to work together to develop an assessment model, we'll do that with you as well. So the focus of the program we want to emphasize is small wetlands, seasonal wetlands, small temporary crop wetlands that are degraded. Those are the easiest to mitigate. We want to try to focus on isolated wetlands that aren't considered waters of the United States. Just makes things a whole lot easier if we provide that focus. Again, we'll provide each entity that receives an award with a checklist on how to develop your mitigation banking instrument. And as your questions arise and you want me or your state office person to look at some things before you present it to us, we're happy to do that. So we wanted to maybe just provide you with a sample of kind of what we're looking for as far as establishing bank sites. This is an example of a site in Minnesota that had been drained before 1985. We're looking for simple to restore sites, put in a ditch plug. There's a seed bank of wetland vegetation already there that'll come back on its own. That's kind of what we want to target. And there's that same site, once the ditch plug has been put in to pond the wetland and create some hydrology. And we know that there's probably a wetland seed bank that's in that black dirt there that will generate and provide the wetland plants that we're looking for as well. I think
All
it's back
right.
to you, Hala.
Yep, all the fun stuff. All right. So, I neglected to change an opportunity number when this went up. So ignore this opportunity number on grants.gov. I'll get that corrected for you all. But if you go to grants.gov and type in Wetland Mitigation Banking Program, this should be the first opportunity that pops up if you type that into the search box. If you have any trouble finding that, you can reach out to us at WMBP@USDA.gov, and I am happy to link you to the correct opportunity number. All applications do need to be submitted electronically through grants.gov. Biggest advice there is please start early. If you already have your sam.gov registration, that's good news. That'll get you going. If you'll have your unique entity identifier. If you don't, you need to get that sam.gov registration going as quickly as possible. That tends to be the big hangup, is just getting all of those registrations in so that you can actually access the grants.gov system. If you have trouble, do reach out to us by email, but we can't guarantee that we'll take any applications that are not received by grants.gov. So we would rather hear sooner than later. Grants.gov help desk tends to be pretty good. So reach out to them if you have any problems, or reach out to us if you aren't getting a response. But I'd rather hear from you tomorrow than 11:50 p.m. on October 10th. So do give yourself some time to get this in. Again, grants.gov is the mechanism. There's a big red apply button. That 800 number is the grants.gov technical support, or support@grants.gov. Our program website is hyperlinked on this slide, but of course you can't click the link that I'm presenting. If you type in WMBP NRCS into your preferred search engine, it should take you to our program page, and that has both the press release talking about this year's announcement, as well as some links to prior year awarded projects if you want to get an idea of what's gone out previously. Said it once, we'll say it again. Do register for System for Award Management soon, and get that all rolled in, because your unique entity identity number, which is what the DUNS has become, is required for the application. So make sure you've got that in hand quickly and soon. All right, there is our email address again. That was a little bit of information pretty quickly, but we've got a couple of you on the line. So Sean and I are available for as many questions as you want to ask us between now and the top of the hour.
Hey, Havla, while they're thinking, I just thought maybe we'd cover a few do's and don'ts. I kind of just went through my head and thought about things that maybe haven't gone right in the past, and through experience, maybe I could cover those real quickly while people are trying to formulate their questions.
That sounds good to me.
Just a few things to think about. Please don't incur expenses before your agreement is completely signed by everyone and executed. We want to make sure you get paid for the work that you do. Manage your agreement. If you're 6 months out, your agreement's getting ready to expire at the end of December and it's July or August, let us know at that time that, hey, I'm behind. I'm going to need an agreement extension. We'll help you with that. We'd rather you not wait until the last minute to ask for that. Again, it's not our responsibility to help you find sites. That's on you to do that. Uh, and then one last thing I thought of as Havla was going through the presentation, for the historically underserved category in your application, we're really encouraging you to pursue that, but please provide some detail there. Just don't say in your application that you plan to work on that. Give us a little bit of detail as to how you plan to proceed in that area. And then the last thing I'll say is please call me if you have any snags or problems. Havla and I are dealing with some things this week where agreements are taking a long time and we didn't know about it. Had we known about it, 6 months ago, we would have jumped in and helped you with that. So just give us a call anytime things aren't going fast enough for you.
All right, Nathan, Bill, any last opportunity for any questions in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourselves?
I'm okay. I don't have any questions right now.
Neither do I, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks both. This should go up on our Wetland Mitigation Banking Program website in the next couple of days. And of course, you've got our email address right there. So just want to echo Sean, don't hesitate to reach out if you run into any snags or have any questions as the application process rolls along. We really appreciate both of your interest and the interest of anybody else who might be watching after this recording is released onto the website. And with that, I think I'll give you back a half hour of your day. Thanks.